And like, you can't force a strike. I mean, the workers can, but you, as a third-party organization, cannot force a strike on behalf of other workers. The energy has to be there. You can't like astroturf a labor militancy by posting flyers or sending emails. You can help it along, to be sure, but I would rather you did that by fostering solidarity between full-timers and part-timers. What's up, everybody? It's your Patreon show for the week. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Thanks for tuning in. I wanted to give a brief update on the tentative agreement, the Teamsters UPS tentative agreement. There was a webinar last night with Sean O'Brien and Fred Zuckerman and other local leadership, obviously like voicing their support for the tentative agreement that they finalized, that they feel like they achieved. Of course, they're kind of full-throatedly getting behind it, and they're proud of it because, you know, they've staked their reputations on it.
Yeah.
And I did want to thank them for all that work. I wanted to thank O'Brien and Zuckerman and the rank and file members who sat in on these negotiations for the first time in decades, or it's just the first time in general, I believe. And I don't know, listening to them tout this tentative agreement kind of gave me pause. Like, I do tend to believe that they believe this is the best contract we can get at this moment. Now, they could always be mistaken, of course. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's 100% correct all the time. But I don't think there's a question of integrity here. I don't think there's a question of like them selling people out. And I feel like those accusations are detrimental to the union as a whole. I feel like every Teamster, whether they're a member, whether they're a rank and file member, whether they're a shop steward, or whether they're in the leadership, we should have a baseline of like trust and respect for each other, because that is how you achieve these goals, is by mutual respect. And this is different than like talking about like, why don't liberals and conservatives get together and shake hands and agree what they can.
This is what they're afraid of.
What I'm talking about is like actual shared material interests. We are all of the working class here, and we all benefit together, or we lose together. So I don't appreciate some of the more hyperbolic and incendiary language around this contract, which again, I think is demonstrably the best contract we've seen in at least my time at UPS. You know, the numbers are pretty astounding, according to Teamsters, of course, provided these numbers are correct and accurate. $30 billion in new money for Teamsters and for, you know, Teamsters goals with this contract. $30 billion from $30 billion in concessions, essentially, from
awesome
the company. And that's juxtaposed with the $13 billion that we got in new money from the 2018 contract. So even with inflation, this agreement is twice as lucrative for members than the 2018. And it's obvious there's not everything we want in this contract. We have like decades of givebacks and concessions that we need to claw back. And that's not, I know people don't want to hear it. That's not going to happen in one contract. There's like a scientific limit to what you can get out of a single contract. There's a finite amount of money that the company has. Now, I'm not saying that we got it all. And in fact, I think we can get more. I do think we can get more out of the company, but only if we are willing to strike for it. Only if we are willing to fight and organize for it. And the vote that we are taking on this tentative agreement, I believe, will be one indication of whether or not we're going to fight for more, whether or not we're going to push leadership farther. And how leadership responds to a no vote, if that happens, will be very informative. Will tell us a lot about this leadership, whether they take it personally or whether they say, okay, there's more work to be done. The members have spoken and we're going to get back to it. And that once we have that response, I feel like some of these criticisms about leadership can come into play. Some of them can be founded in something, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but I mean, I think your and my non-important critique is that like they could have gone harder for the part-timers, could have got more money for the part-timers. But there's also this, narrative that's pretty like widely accepted even by progressive type people that a living wage is like $20, and I think they think that's they exceeded that, so they think that's good enough, and like that's a bigger conversation than
Right.
just this one negotiation. You know what I'm saying?
100% correct. Because good leadership, mostly follows the rank and file, follows our sentiments about this. Now, if this contract gets voted down, who's to say that it got voted down on behalf of part-timers? Now if you look at, if you're able, I don't know if they're able to do this, but if they're able to look at whether it was a part-time voter or a full-time voter and the part-timers had the no vote locked up, then maybe you can extrapolate and say, okay, we need to fight harder for part-timers or whatever. But this idea that if we vote no, that means a better contract for part-timers, I don't know if that's what that means.
Yeah.
Because some people are upset about pensions. Some people are upset about the driver progression in general, which we've talked about on this show before. And some people are upset about the raises we got. Some people feel like even full-timers deserved a bigger raise, which I would hear that argument as well. If there's more money, full-timers sure should be eligible for some of that as well. So in order to get the results we want, a lot of things have to happen. I mean, we have to be ready to push leadership in those specific directions that we want. And I've seen a lot of criticisms of leadership that just come down to like personal grievances with O'Brien or personal grievances with Zuckerman. I've seen very few good faith critiques of these leaders. I've heard they lied to us about this, or they promised us this and they didn't get this. And it's like, I never heard any promise from leadership to get us anything except the best contract that we've had in years.
Yeah.
And they did. Everything else was like, well, and getting rid of 22.4. I heard that as a big, like, that is what we were going to do with this contract. Everything else was like, this is what we're fighting for. This is what we're gunning for. And I believe they fought for those things. The only thing that I saw O'Brien go back on was the August 1st deadline. Was the August 1st was supposed to trigger a strike because we weren't going to work with a contract extension. Our previous contract expired July 31st. August 1st, we wouldn't have a new contract, so we wouldn't work, right?
Yeah.
But when that July 5th deadline passed, we needed the rest of July in order to vote on a contract, vote on a tentative agreement, and ratify it in order to not strike on August 1st. Well, when that July 5th deadline passed, a strike was inevitable unless O'Brien walked it back. And apparently the company gave him enough reason to say that they were going to actually come to the table and give up what they didn't want to give up. And I think trying to avoid a strike, if the company is going to meet your demands, I think that's a valid negotiating tactic. Strikes are extremely disruptive, and nobody knows what's going to happen. If we strike, I've talked a lot about this in the last 2 weeks, so I can't remember if I'm repeating myself for Minion Death Cult specifically, but if we go on strike, we're going to lose customers. If we go on strike, we're going to have members laid off, possibly.
Yeah.
That's not to say we shouldn't do it, and that's not to say we won't benefit in the long run, to be sure. But those are real concerns. Those are real concerns for the members, not just for like O'Brien's ego or whatever. That's a material concern of the members. And so if you can get the best contract possible without, now, I don't know if you can get the best contract possible without striking. I think striking would
I think
probably.
so. That's probably good. No matter what they're offering you, you can always get a little bit more with a strike. I believe that. Yeah.
Right, but
Wholeheartedly.
would that increment be worth the strike in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. That increment is the question, because there will be an increment, but what is that? What does that look like?
Right. So I don't hold it against O'Brien for wanting to give the company a way to avoid a strike. I'm fine with him altering it, but once he did that, it's hard to see where we go from here, how we continue to fight this contract, because there's no doubt that like let off a lot of steam, a lot of pent up strike energy, and just the logistics of organizing a strike. Well, now whatever strike happens, if one happens, is going to be on a different day, because we're recording this on August 1st.
August 1st, yeah.
So there's going to be a different day. So it's just none of, the logistics is all going to have to change. But anyway, yeah, I've seen a lot of third parties, other organizing groups, left organizing groups, who have reached out to me to see how they can help at best, and at worst to like have you co-sign their agenda for the Teamsters workforce. I've seen some infuriating email blasts about how leadership is failing the Teamsters, and
Wow.
it's a sellout contract and yada yada. And it's like, I understand you may want the best for workers, but this leadership seems to be at this point miles better than any previous leadership, and more democratic and more receptive to members. And I don't think like insulting that leader personally or calling them a sellout is helping the union, who could possibly like push and direct this leadership. Like I don't think like getting a new president next election is like a solution, and the end all be all solution. I want to see what we can do with this guy.
Yeah.
And I don't need you like calling him a sellout or a traitor before we've even voted on the contract. Like, how do you know what members want? How do you know what the rank and file members want? And like, you can't force a strike. I mean, the workers can, but you as a third party organization cannot force a strike on behalf of other workers. The energy has to be there. You can't like astroturf a labor militancy by posting flyers or sending emails. You can help it along, to be sure, but I would rather you did that by fostering solidarity between full-timers and part-timers. Because if you're worried about part-time pay and you want part-timers to be paid more, there's a lot more people to convince than just O'Brien. There's other UPS workers inundated with American propaganda for their entire lives who don't think that part-timers deserve a living wage. So that's the work to be done, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The work to be done isn't like swaying a vote one way or the other, because all the other muscle and energy has to be behind that no vote, or else it doesn't achieve what we want.
The way people talk about this stuff without like being in it is just always so funny, because it's so easy to sit back and be like, nah, I would have done more. Nah, I would actually, you know what? I would have been firebombed them. I would have been firebombed them like forever ago. But it's like, that's really cool that you're able to say that. But like, kind of either support the workers or mind your business. Those are my only options for you.
Yeah.
Support the people who are working, the laborers, the non-management, the people we're fighting for. Support them, or shut the fuck up. Because it doesn't really affect you. And if you do feel that energy and like you do want that, then make it so that no matter where you work, you have what you want UPS to fight for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that same criticism, I feel that internally when I criticize this tentative agreement.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm like, I wasn't there. I wasn't there in the room with UPS. I don't have UPS's finances in front of me. I don't have a team of lawyers and math guys to add up the cost of every benefit we want and to see if that matches up with what UPS has to spend. there are a ton of other people doing that work, and you might think, oh, there's just a union organizer. That's not real work. And it's like, well, it's not delivering packages, but it is work. It's a different kind of I mean, they were pulling like 14-hour days negotiating this shit, flying back and forth and like spending a day with their family to then fly back to DC and get jerked around by the company some more. So again, like I have my intuitive disagreements with this tentative agreement, but I can't speak with authority on it, and it's just going to come up to the members how the members feel about it, where the energy is.
And also going back to that, you get to be critical of it. You get to demand more of it because you would be the one who has to strike. You're the one who's actually going to have to take a hit in to the wallet if push does come to shove. I don't get to sit here and say shit because I would love to be like, nope, they need to get them $69 an hour. Part-time needs $69 an hour, and actually part-time should just be full-time. I don't get to do that because I don't have, but you do, so you can. So my position is fuck yeah, absolutely. Whatever you say, as someone who has skin in the game, as a worker, as somebody who's I have class solidarity with, whatever you say, I'm with.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear.
And you're the grand you, not just Alexander. I mean the grand
all right,
Brown,
whatever.
the grand Brown.
Whatever, dude. Yeah, so those are my feelings on the contract. I'm still gonna vote no to see what happens.
Yeah.
See where the energy is, and I mean, even if we don't strike, I think we can get a little something. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I've never been more optimistic about being a Teamster. I've never really looked forward to what we can accomplish as Teamsters until, these last couple of years. And that's, my own fault for not being as involved in the union and all that. But also, again, it's this material reality that we're working with. The energy is coming up. It's palpably coming up among the rank and file. And it's infective and it's infectious. And it's, I feel like it's only going to spread. It's only going to get stronger. And yeah, I think the real fight is eliminating the internalized classism that a lot of wage earners still hold on to, and fostering solidarity among our union siblings, because that's where the power comes from. You can try to get the public on your side, and that does help for morale, and that does help show the company that they're on the wrong side. But it's the actual muscle. The rank and file members are the actual muscle, and we need to all be working together, and we all need to be sympathetic to each other's needs and representative of each other, not just ourselves. And that's a long-term project that we're working on, and I'm seeing gains, I'm seeing wins, I'm seeing fat gains. This union's gonna be yoked pretty soon.
Yeah, I love it. I love to hear it. I love to see it. I will say, you could go ahead and get off the union's teat if you would just bank black, but
well, I mean, why would I do that when I could just start my own bank?
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's very valid. That's very valid.
I don't need a handout from Black Bank. All right.
I don't want to take up space in the Black Bank.
This isn't for me, and I'm okay with that. It's just I sign up for the white account, and it's just like fees every day, no matter your balance.
It's one of those like penny roundoffs.
Okay. Last thing, I was on Antifada this week, kind of going into a long in-depth conversation about a lot of the stuff I just mentioned, but those guys over there, Sean and Andy, they're pretty well versed in political theory and history, and so they were able to guide the conversation in very interesting ways. Highly recommend checking out that episode I did with them and their Patreon. There's a much longer version of the episode where we talked about union busters trying to get us to feel sorry for them on Twitter. That's in their Patreon. So go ahead and support a really good show and get a really long episode with me and those guys.
Yeah, one of the best out. Definitely check it out.